Right, let's get into some StarCraft. We have got XxROFLLMAO against Smarticus. It's Roffle up in the top left of Submarine, playing as Protoss, and we've got Smarticus down in the bottom right. So it's PvP on Submarine. One of our 3 maps, of course, and actually a reasonably normal map, certainly compared to the weirdness that is Agria Valley. So already Smarticus slightly behind, very slightly behind, not too much of a delay. But look at this, why isn't this worker mining again, Smarticus? You know, you're losing minerals here. As you've probably already gathered, those of you that have been practicing, StarCraft is a game of narrow margins. You know what I mean? When you play, as someone that's played quite a bit, when you play with people who are new to the game, frequently they're just kind of surprised by like how much stuff you've got so early, and they're like, how have you managed to build so much stuff? And you know, it isn't that you've done anything specifically different than them, but you've eked out all those little edges. Your first pile on was a few seconds earlier, your worker went back to mining, so you had enough minerals for the gateway a few extra seconds earlier, and then it's a few more seconds earlier, and before you know it, you're a minute ahead, and then you're 2 minutes ahead. It is all about eking out those tiny fractions, and that is especially true in the early game. Your first couple of minutes have got to be pretty crisp if you want to be in any way sort of competitive on ladder or whatever. It's all about those tiny fractions. So as we can see, we've got Roffle. I'm just going to speed this up a little bit, and in fact, yeah, everything's fine. I'm just going to double speed it. So the side core is coming down over on the top left for Roffle, but Smarticus no side core yet, and look, why are the zealots queued up here on the other? You know, none of this build makes sense. There's no expand. There's gas being mined, but you've got no way to spend it because you haven't got a side core. Like you cannot build anything that costs gas. So, you know, this is just like why this build makes no sense, and now you're supply blocked, and there's no excuse for that when all you're doing is building zealots. It's not like you were busy doing something else. You weren't. So up in the top left, this looks like a much more normal build. There are zealots coming out. We've got work being researched. There is gas being mined, so I wouldn't mind seeing that gas be used on some higher tech units, and I think definitely, given the amount of money in the bank, Roffle is definitely ready to start teching up. But it is going to be a gateway explosion. I don't know about this location for the robo. As you can see, that is blocking the path to the gas, so now these workers are having to go the long way around. So to get maximum efficiency from this gas, you'd need probably 5 workers mining from it. So I don't like that positioning, but you know, you live and learn. +1 shields, that's a bit odd. +1 shields, for all intents and purposes, is kind of the same thing as +1 armor, and +1 armor is cheaper, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, now that the gateways have turned into warp gates, we have got these stalkers coming out. We've got an immortal building, we've got more stalkers coming out. That's just going to win against these zealots. It's as simple as that. The zealots don't have charge. The expo is now up, but it's lit. There's no workers in production on either side of the map, I would point out. And you know, in case I've never mentioned it before, you do not stop building the workers unless it's a very unusual game. If it's a normal build, and this is, you know, neither player has been in any way interfered with, nor has either player shown signs of interfering with their opponent. So if you've got nothing better to do than to macro up, you don't stop building the workers. This is unfortunate. It looks like this is rallied into the gas. I think Roffle's finally realized that, and he's pulling the workers out of it. But yeah, the rally point is still set, so they are going to continue to go in there. Bit of a mismatch, mismash is what I meant to say there. Mismatch of units. You don't often see a sort of void ray in the mix with a stalker heavy army. But the Immortal is a nice touch. Immortals do kind of come together quite well with Stalkers. You can put them in at the back, they've got a better range, they're pretty brutal indeed. These Zealots, if you're going to build this many Zealots, you have to, and I mean you have to have the charge upgrade, and that is going to come out of the Twilight console, but there's no Twilight console in sight. So, you know, the expand is saturated now for Smarticus. The Expo is saturated here for Roffle, and the third is building. So, you know, can't complain too much about the setups that I'm seeing on either side really now. This is beginning to look much more useful. These 4 Immortals here will obliterate these Stalkers. Immortals, you know, if somebody said they're going to build an awful lot of Stalkers, or if you knew your opponent had a lot of Stalkers and you were thinking, what unit should I build? The answer is Immortals. It's as simple as that. And this many Immortals will just decimate, absolutely decimate Stalkers. They smash them to pieces. It's brutal. So the Immortal is a very, very good anti-Stalker unit. So if these Zealots had charge, this army is actually pretty hench. And this army, yeah, there's a lot of Stalkers in here. The sentries could be incredibly useful against the Zealots if they're used to place those force fields, but with only 2 Immortals, army versus army, it could get a bit nasty. The momma ship, however, is going to change everything. This mothership is going to cloak everything that we can see. So unless Smarticus has got some sort of detection, he's going to be in real trouble with when this arrives. He has got a very punchy army. He's got the punchier of the 2 armies. He's got splash damage. He's got single hit output with the Immortals. I'm not really sure why he's just letting that die and not moving. You don't want this to get separated. You do not want your Colossus down here. The issue he's got is his units just can't see the other units, so they're not shooting them, and they can't get quite close enough. The Zealots, obviously, and the Immortals do nothing to the momma ship. So, unfortunately, we've seen this before. This is not the first time we've seen this. It is the cloaked army that is just going to get away with it. I would have been really interesting to see that battle happen again without the mothership, because I think it goes absolutely the other way. I think the Immortal Colossus, the splash damage from the Colossus, the Zealots preventing stuff from getting on top of the Colossus, and the Immortals just flattening Stalkers. I think Smarticus wins that fight pretty comfortably, to be honest. But as it's turned out, in the absence of detection, he hasn't won anything, and it's a real shame because he had those 2 robos. Had he built an observer, he had that in the bag. But as is, GG.